to defend the free world. Many armies were sent from the Royal Ulster Rifles. 2 battalions went in horse gliders by air and landing craft by sea. They landed in Normandy in the fight to be free. The first of them to land did so by sea. Their first obstacle, water, it's way above the knee. To take a little village, many Ulster sons lost. Many had no children, their bloodline the cost.
So I'm sitting around over here, chilling like a villain, you know, plotting world destruction and takeover and everything, you know.
As you do.
My dog, as you do with my dog, yeah. And I get a text from you. You send me a text like, hey, check out The Last Rifleman. And I was like, okay, I'll check it out. Ironically, you know, I had just sat down and was just kind of scrolling through my phone, hadn't turned on the TV, or had just turned on the TV, but hadn't checked anything. And I was like, fine, Last Rifleman. Blah, 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 blah. And I watched it immediately.
And I'm glad I caught you at a good moment, because I have no problem admitting that at the moment I texted you that, I had tears streaming down both cheeks, because that was how much the movie affected me, and I couldn't even tell you the last time I saw a current day movie that made me feel real emotions. What an unexpectedly wonderful thing that was.
I was very pleasantly surprised with it, and might have had to take my one-man tear to the shower, you know. But in general, just to give sort of an overview, I can't remember which division it was. It's the
2nd Ulster Rifles.
2nd Ulster Rifles Corps. What was it, like 2,700 people in the Corps entirely, like 129 in his particular little...
Yes, and I believe, I did look it up afterward, and I don't recall exactly, but I believe, so you've got, from west to east, you've got the 2 American beaches, Omaha and Utah, then you've got the 2 British beaches, Gold and Sword, and then you've got the Canadian beach, Juno, and I believe the 2nd Ulster Rifles would have been on Sword Beach, if I'm not mistaken.
They would have been flanked on the right side by additional British and the left side by the Canadians.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Okay, so the story opens with this old guy in an old folks home talking to a bunch of other old folks, and him and his wife are in the same old folks home, same hospice care. That's what this is. Let's not be silly about it. These people are waiting to die. It's not made that plain, but it is obvious. And then his wife dies, and it's a very sad, poignant thing, and you can see it really, really affects him. But you can also see that it's the only reason he was still in that home and accepted all of the prescriptions on his movement was because of her. And
he was taking care of his wife to her dying day, even though she was riddled with dementia and sometimes mistook him for another man, which you know has to be agonizing.
For a specific other man, did you notice that part?
Yes.
She called him Charlie.
His best friend, whom she would have married if he had survived the war, and he didn't survive the war because he, Artie Crawford, was not the hero that day. He was cowering in fear behind a tree, and his friend Charlie had to turn around and come back for him, and then got blown to bits. And then Artie Crawford winds up being the man who survives the war and gets to live a good long life with a rack of medals on his chest and be treated like the hero, when all he did, and get the girl, when all he really did was be a coward. And I really like the exploration of every different facet of war guilt like that.
Well, I get that, and I totally get what you're saying, and you are not wrong on anything that you said, but keep in mind, this movie only depicts his actions in a single battle. It doesn't give you anything after that, and that war went on for what? For the British, it was like 6 years?
It was 6 years, indeed. 39 to 45.
So you're talking about from the storming of the beaches until the end of the war, that's 4 years, right? Technically.
Well, no, D-Day is 6 June of 44, and the war ends in May of 45, so it's 11 months between the one and the
11
other.
months. Okay, all right, my bad. So in the 11 months, it only shows the initial breakout north of Carrington, somewhere over there.
Yep.
I don't know exactly where. And this initial breakout involves the death of his friend.
Yep.
We don't hear anything else about what happened, but he's got a whole rack of salad on his chest.
And
right,
you raised an excellent point, and I agree with your analysis, because he doesn't get that whole rack of medals just from hiding behind a tree.
That's right. I think the implication that's not written into the script or the movie, and what makes it such a deep watch, is the fact that he does have that rack of medals on his chest, and he is treated as a hero. He left that spot having witnessed his best friend's death, having written his dying letter home, having sent it to his fiancée back home, and then went through the war trying to make it up, to be a good man.
Yes, and even in spite of whatever legitimate heroics he engaged in and was decorated for after that incident, the only incident that sticks in his mind is when his best friend got blown to bits because he was cowering in fear.
Because he was a coward. And I think that's the subtext between the person that he is. Because I had a thought when he was trying to cross the channel to get into France. I was like, shit, you couldn't stop him 60 years ago. The hell you think you're going to stop him today? He's got even less to lose today, bro. Like, he's going. You might as well just wave that kid through.
And I didn't even know Pierce Brosnan is an Irishman. Did you know that?
I was wondering about that.
I spent the whole movie thinking, wow, Pierce Brosnan is doing a great job with this Ulster accent for being an Englishman playing Irish. Then afterward, I pull up his Wikipedia page, and it turns out he's been Irish all along and playing English his whole career. So, mind blown.
I mean, that actually gives him a better claim for James Bond than he had before, in my mind.
Yeah, when a guy plays James Bond, I mean, I guess with the obvious exception of Sean Connery, you just kind of assume he's English. And I never knew, but he's been an Irishman all along.
Dude, Sean Connery is a very good, very, very good example of a well-cast Bond. And the fact that was he Scottish?
Yes.
The fact that he's Scottish doesn't matter in the leastest. Not even a little.
And he never tried to play English when he was playing Bond. He was Scottish all the way.
But yeah, I just kind of think everybody assumed he was English because he played Bond. I mean, that seems...
Yeah, I did. I mean, all the way back to when he was Remington Steele, I assumed he was English, and I just never even bothered looking it up. So that kind of blew my mind.
So the movie plays out. He makes it to the reunion. There's this huge freaking party going on over there, and he has one of the best scenes in the movie. Is it James? Who is James Olmos?
John Amos.
John Amos.
Who everyone in the audience will remember as the dad from Good Times. He was also in Roots. So he shows up for a very pivotal scene during the third act, which is
much like our gentleman from Ulster. He is the last surviving member of a totally different rifle corps, not the Buffalo Soldiers, but the other black infantry of World War II that nobody ever talks about.
And they were the ones responsible for raising the barrage balloons over the beach.
Yep, and they also happen to have one other distinguishing feature. They were the very first unit to put a black man's feet on the soil. And he tells this really quick story. It's 10 seconds, 15 seconds or something. He just stands up, he's fixing to leave, and he looks at the man, and without knowing anything about the Ulster Rifleman's story, he tells him an almost identical story. He said, I got all these medals on my chest, not because I took that beach. And they named me the first black man to set foot in Europe. Yeah. But that's not true. My little brother came up.
And my brother wound up getting killed, and he was the real hero. And compared to him, I didn't really do shit. Which is exactly the same as Artie's story, as you mentioned.
It's so poignant. The way he says it like a confession.
Yeah.
And Artie looks at him and nods. And there's a shot of Jack placed on the table for him that he hasn't touched. And the man walks away, and he sits there for a second and goes... and takes the shot, and then passes out, ends up in the hospital, and has to make another jailbreak to make it to the place he's trying to get to, which turns out not to be this big party, not to be the parade at all, but a gentleman's great.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I love about the movie. It makes us assume the whole way along that he just wants to make it to the anniversary celebration, But right at the end, it disabuses us of that belief, and we realize, no, he just wanted to go to Charlie's grave and leave this letter.
There is one additional thing there, however, and it deeply moved me when it happened. When he goes to the hotel that used to have a bar, and it's a office building or something now, or an updated hotel. It's no longer the classy, French pub that it once was or whatever. And he goes there and he talks to the guy. He's like, hey, if anybody like me come by, medals and stuff. And they're like, no, sir, we don't serve drinks here anymore. He's like, but nobody showed up. And he's like, no, sir. Well, that's impossible. Okay, I'll be back.
Always here.
Well, he leaves.
They always show up. Yep.
And he comes back later, like, I don't know, 4 hours later or whatever. And he's like, has anybody showed up? And they're like, no. Or maybe there was somebody else who came by because that's where they always went. And it was like, oh, there's this one old gentleman who come through. And that's how he finds him in the hospital, if I'm not mistaken. Right?
Yeah.
Or did he?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, he finds him in the hospital, finds out, this is when you find out that he is the sole surviving member of the entire division. Every man who stormed that beach that day is dead, except him.
And hence the title of the movie. And
the title.
There were a few different places in the narrative where I thought the movie very easily could have taken a left turn into maudlin sentimentality and avoided doing that. And I'll tell you the one spot where I was most worried about that. It is when Artie is trying to get from, I guess he's at Omaha Beach and he's trying to get to Sword Beach, which is the place where he's actually going. And the French lady who has picked him up and helped him on his way only has one bus that she can put him on, and it is a German bus full of German veterans. And this man has not come face to face with one single German since June of 1944. But he really wants to get to where he's going, and he grudgingly climbs aboard the German bus and sits and has a very awkward conversation with a man named Friedrich Müller, who is a veteran of the SS who was conscripted to go be among the Normandy defenders. And I was so afraid at this point that the movie was going to have them become fast friends and buddies and complete the journey together, and it resists the temptation to do that. And I'm so glad it did, because they don't become fast friends. They have a conversation that never winds up not being awkward, but they do recognize each other's humanity. They don't even wind up shaking hands. And the ultimate denouement of the sequence is that Friedrich Müller, as Artie is getting off the bus, he simply says, maybe in a different time and place, we could have drunk a schnapps together. And Artie says, maybe. And that's it. And it was just a wonderful scene. And I think it's the crux of the entire movie. I'm actually getting emotional talking about it.
I love that scene. It's a really good one. And the fact that it's followed up with, basically him hooking up with a young Scottish kid who's just on his way somewhere because the bus breaks down.
Yeah, and they bond over the music of Ennio Morricone, and right. I thought that was well done too.
I love that whole sequence. I don't know if he was Irish or what, Scottish. I couldn't tell, but I love
probably
the
Irish because he has to start out in Ulster, and then obviously he has to go through the Republic of Ireland, where he encounters some anti-British sentiment, and he kind of has to sheepishly admit that, yeah, I actually fought for the British, sorry. And right. Then I am assuming that he leaves from the southernmost point in the Republic of Ireland, which I believe is Cobb, which is a much longer journey than it is from England, from Dover or Land's End or wherever. It's actually an overnight journey at that point. It's so long.
Right. But, so it needs a room.
And that's one of the fascinating things about the first act is that we kind of get a little dose of internal Irish politics about the difference between Ulstermen and Irishmen.
Yeah, he reaches the shore. He runs into the problem of his freaking passport being like 8 years out of date, and there's no way he's going to be able to get anywhere near any of this. And he runs across a French lady, and this French lady is like, "Look, we can get you in, right? Come on." We'll figure it out. She loads him up in her caravan, and they sneak him into France. And they're through a bunch of BS on the boat. They basically bug out. And he asks her, he's like, "Tell me something. Why are you helping me out?" And she points at the medals on his chest and says, "My grandmother was in the French." Yeah, and maybe it's just in the blood, but basically it's the right thing to do. And I think anyone put in that position would acknowledge that it's the right thing to do, but not everyone would break Interpol laws to accomplish the right thing. No. And it sort of says something about the quality of person that he tends to attract. The young Scottish fellow, Irish fellow, whatever, who helped him down the road, that he has a little diabetic thing, and they give him some freaking sugar, and they have a little bonding.
They get picked up by a lady truck driver, and he that takes a little getting used to for him.
And she's completely cool with it. Has no feelings as far as all that. It's
she gives the two of them a lecture about Irish military history, which I love. I thought that was great.
Yeah, I mean, right? Yep. The whole thing. It's not a barrel of laughs. Don't misunderstand me. But it is poignant. It is well written. It is amazingly well performed. The dialogue never takes a trip by itself. It always brings you along with it, and it's never quite what you expect. It feels very organic, like these are actual people saying actual things that actual people would actually say, with a couple of exceptions. Like when they do the switcheroo on the ferry, and homeboy rides out, that scene where he's riding past the guard gate and they wave him through and stop her, and he gets that big shitty grin on his face. There's a lot of stuff.
You have to do that whole like Breaking Bad style handoff in the rail yard area.
Right, but there's a lot of very subtle movie making that takes place in the scenes of this movie without you ever being told. Without it does the show, don't tell. It does it. It does it well.
Yes. And I was really astounded after I had watched it and loved it, and you had watched it and loved it, and I went and looked on Rotten Tomatoes and found that it only had a 71% from the top critics, for whatever that label is worth. And I said, okay, I got to go and read what these negative reviews have to say. And I suspected before I went and read them, correctly as it turns out, that there is a common perception among film critics of a certain age, let's just call them millennials, that they predispose themselves to give negative reviews to any movie that they see as glorifying the Second World War, because they just view that as terribly unfashionable. And I found that a lot of that came through in my reading of the negative review. One of the common complaints was, and I shit you not, and you're just going to scoff at this, and you're going to scoff at it correctly. They kept saying, well, it has such a traditional formulaic road trip structure. And I'm thinking, it's a movie about a fucking road trip. What kind of structure do you want it to have?
Yeah, no, that's a perfectly valid complaint, if you wish.
And the other complaint was about the two subplots. We of course have the one subplot with Ian McElhenney, I believe is his name, Sir Barristan Selmy from Game of Thrones, who everybody will know him from that role. They didn't like that subplot, and they also didn't like the subplot with the journalist who winds up chasing after him. But neither of those subplots really bothered me in the slightest. I mean, I guess they were each a bit corny in their own way, but I don't think it detracted from the narrative at all.
I really like the reporter that shows up, and the fact that he's balls deep in as soon as he shows up. The second he meets that guy, he's like, "Hey, I really want you to do this thing. I'm here to follow you to the end of the story. I want to get, and he just kind of shrugs at it. It's like, okay, fine. And they have themselves.
Even though he's just trying to get a juicy narrative to write in his newspaper, he is the guy who gets Artie to his ultimate destination. And so you have a problem with that subplot when it ties into the main plot and winds up being critical to the plot in the end.
Well, the real plot, and this is the thing, there's so many layers of plot going on that it's hard to parse it all out the first time through. In fact, I told you I'm going to have to process that before I'm willing to discuss it, for reasons like the fact that he feels completely responsible for, every horrible thing that ever happened. And the only part of the war that he really remembers is the killing of his friend. Everything else that happened could have been absolutely heroic, and you'd never know. He'd never mention it.
And I felt like in a few of these unfavorable reviews that I was reading, that the critics were trying so hard to find something not to like that they didn't take the time to appreciate all the subtext that is actually present in the narrative, and that's their loss. And naturally, it won't surprise you to hear that these unfavorable reviews were all in the big Hollywood trades, your Hollywood Reporter and your Variety and all that kind of stuff. And what a bunch of trash.
And you can expect it, though. I mean, it was done.
Yep.
But it's 2023, I think. 2024.
Yeah. Yep. 23. I thought it was 23. 24. Yeah.
I'm just saying the trailer says 24, so it's probably filmed in 23. And as you can see, this is a 62-year-old Pierce Brosnan playing a 92.
He's 72 playing 92.
And the comparison I made was the 45-year-old who plays a high school senior. You know, but this is a very different exchange. And while he does seem pretty spry for a 92-year-old man, he does a phenomenal job of being the duck out of water, completely out of sync with the times, not understanding anything, but still just getting along to get along, the whole nine. But I want to go back directly to the reporter, because the story he actually gets is probably a story he actually won't write until later, right? The fact that he was a coward, that he watched his friend die, that not only that, he wrote his friend's death letter to his friend's fiance, and then went back to England and married her, lived a whole life with her, only to be mistaken as his best friend when she got old and demented.
After 68 years, your wife is mistaking you for another man, and how awful must that feel?
And one of the final scenes in the movie, and I think it's one of the more poignant ones. I mean, this absolutely broke me. I had to go take a shower and shed my one-man tear a year. He writes Margaret's death letter to Charlie.
Yep.
And goes and sets it on his grave. And that's why he's there. That's the whole purpose. Everything else was just what he had to deal with to get to this point. And you see the effect that it has on the reporter when he's like over here, he's popping pictures, and he sees the letter that he read in the hospital that hadn't been signed, sees him set it on the grave, and he's like, oh wow, he did it both ways. He deceived everyone, right?
Yeah, and he figures it out at the exact same moment the viewer does. So ultimately he functions as a proxy for the viewer, which is a brilliant thing for the movie to do, and just excellently executed, I thought.
It's an unbelievable film. And The Last Rifleman is the name of the film. One of those Metro Goldwyn? No, Samuel Goldwyn films. So
a movie that didn't even get a theatrical release. And if we were living, like I told you yesterday, if we were living in the late 70s or the early 80s, when a movie like this could get studio backing and a wide release, it would have been one of the biggest box office hits of the year. I thought back to the example after we talked yesterday about On Golden Pond, which I think was from 1981, and it's just a movie about a couple of old people sitting on their porch waiting to die. But it's Henry Fonda and Kate Hepburn. It's a couple of actors that people really like, each doing their last great performance. And I think it was the number one or two box office hit of 1981. A movie like that couldn't even get a theatrical release today because it's not $300 million disposable superhero dog shit that goes in one ear and out the other, and you don't remember anything about it after you got done watching it. And how far cinema has fallen.
How far cinema has fallen. Absolutely.
From the Royal